Welcome to the Contractor Sales Academy podcast. And Steve, Derek, what's going on? Good to see you guys today.
It's good to be here today.
Yeah, Hollywood.
Shut up. So yeah, I had a good, Steve saying it's good to be here today. Reminds me, I coached one of my best friend's dad, been a football coach for like 150 years. And I used to coach with the guy, and at the time he was 70 something years old. And every time I'd say, "Hey coach, how you doing today?" And his answer was always the same. It's like any day above 6 feet above the ground's a good day. That was his whole take on it. Like, as long as I'm on this side of the earth, that's what it was. If I'm on this side of the ground, it's a good day. And he was a guy that had a ton of health issues and stuff like that. So he had a lot of gratitude around that. But anyway, so, you guys ever done something and the first time you did it wasn't so good?
Yeah, it's called everything.
Yeah, everything, right? Like Neil reminded me of that today. We were talking about some things. Neil's our wingman here. And he goes, "Dude, I remember when you recorded your first podcast ever and you sent it to me and you didn't want to release it because it was so bad." And it really was. He's like, "You were so nervous. You were so this and that." And he said, "I remember I had to pull over." He goes, "I pulled over in Oswego, Illinois at the Giordano's Pizza and the parking lot was empty." And he says, "I pulled over so I could focus on talking you off the ledge." That's what he said to me, because I was totally freaking out about my first podcast episode ever. And I remember him saying, "Dude, just keep grinding, just keep doing it. It's going to get better." And I brought that up because it's some of the things we were talking about before we hit record, that I thought it would just be kind of good for all of us to think back to I don't know, think about the first time you had sex, right? Or think about the first time you drank. You probably weren't as good as you are now at it, right? And I mean, we could go on and on, but
that's subjective.
Yeah. The first time I picked up drumsticks, right? I'm a drummer, and I'm now teaching myself how to play bass. And the first time I'm trying to put my fingers in certain places and it feels awkward. And how about what comes by? That was really bad. Anyway,
that sounded like your sex question.
Yeah, no shit. So what comes to mind for you guys? Let's non-business related. What's a first that was really awkward for you?
Man.
I know what Steve's gonna
say. It's that first, when you're going to ask that girl out, not having the words, not knowing what to say. It's like that. I remember it well. It's fourth grade. We were asking her out. What do you do in fourth grade? But I remember sitting in the desk in front of her, being like as nervous as I've ever been in my life, because I just didn't have the words, and I wouldn't be able to string them together. Now that's changed completely, which ties into how we're going through this stuff. And I'm so grateful, Tom, when you talk about gratitude and your friend, I'm so grateful now because of Shinfu and putting the time and the effort, that I feel confident and comfortable that I have the words needed in pretty much any situation. Now, doesn't mean I'm going to, well, except with my wife, because that doesn't count. But it's just to have the words to string together when I'm in a tough situation, or I'm dealing with objections, or if it's just how to know when not to use words through the sales process.
So Derek, before you go on any further, you just kind of edged Steve out of that whole answer. He never even got to answer his first time of something that was really awkward, man. So we can't leave him hanging. No, he's not off the hook.
Yeah. What you got, Steve?
I guess I think back of my first early days of drinking, it was Schlitz beer and Boone's Farm wine.
There you go.
And that's a night.
I know. But now when I drink, as you guys know, I'm a huge snob when it comes to the types of liquor, wines, and beers that I drink. I'm very specific, and I'll not drink if I don't have those high-end quality things that I like. So that was a huge difference from start clumsiness to now.
Well, speaking of clumsiness, I thought you were going to talk about dance when we started your dance lessons, but
that was just terrible. That was a mental breakdown at 60 years old. That was just so over the top that I, on the one hand, teach people to be confident in themselves. but I could not have been a less confident person in the dance floor when I first started learning at 60. So that was very uncomfortable.
So Derek, you talked about knowing what to say, knowing what not to say. How do you get there through the awkwardness, right? That's really the point of today. And you know, that first draft that we have at something, right? We always have a first draft of something, which I know you got bringing up before we hit record here. So what's that all about?
Well, it's just having the words is through repetition, and we find out. And Steve, you know, you've mentioned the shitty first draft, but it's through repetition and training and understanding and body language and vernacular and tonality. It's like all the things that you have to go through. But before you get there, you deal with Steve. You know, talk about that, the shitty first draft.
The shitty first draft was a term brought on by Brene Brown, who's a psychological researcher. And basically, when any circumstance, situation happens to you, someone goes, "Hey, screw you, fat ass." What happens is we have this first thought in our head, and it normally comes from a emotional place. And it's normally like a school paper, your shitty first draft. You don't turn in the first draft to the teacher. You do the second draft, third draft, fourth draft, and then you turn that in. Well, your very first emotional guttural thought is not normally the best thought. It's just the first thought, and it's the shitty first thought that comes in your head. So if somehow you could go to the second draft or the third draft in terms of what you are saying or thinking, then your life is going to be a hell of a lot better off, because you're going to react in the proper way instead of right off the cuff. And when we talk about sales, before you learn what you're talking about, Derek, this whole shin fu and all this kind of stuff, the problem is uncertainty. You don't know what you're going to say. You're just reacting off of what the customer just said. So you're just throwing out the first thing that comes up, which unfortunately you feel like you got to be, Mr. Know-it-all. So that comes up and you sound like, guess what? A Mr. Know-it-all. But what you're talking about, Derek, is because you've practiced. Literally, for us, no matter what the customer says, we actually have 2 or 3 or 4 kind of memorized responses in our back pocket. And we are actually shuffling through those 4 responses going, which response is the best one for this situation? And all this is going lightning fast in your head. It feels so natural. And when it feels like that, you're prepared. You come with a certain air of confidence. And you can actually control the entire situation, all the while making the customer think they're controlling the situation.
And it gets into, how we affectionately call this Shin Fu because of Steve Shinholzer and the Kung Fu, dealing with objections and deflections. But I heard a fighter say one time, he's trained his ass off to learn how to fight so that he never has to fight. Because he'll be in a situation and he's so confident and knows he did just turn around and walk away because he doesn't need to. Like, it's not necessary. And that, when I think about the training that we go to, doesn't it make sense to just change your default system? If you default to your reaction, your shitty first draft, and it really doesn't behoove you and doesn't really work anyway, doesn't it make sense to spend some time in something industry specific that is relative to what you're trying to do and grow your business, and then in turn change generations, as we were speaking about before, on communication? Because now when I'm speaking with someone, or listening, I should say, I already understand where they're going with it. And like Steve's saying, it's just like, okay, do I pull this one out? Do I pull this one out? Do I pull this one out? Oh, they gave me a little more information. Let me shove those back in my tool bag for a minute. And then maybe I use this one here. And we can turn that around sometimes when they're really putting it on us and pouring it on us and it's tough. We can turn that around and ask them the right question that can shift and deflect. But it only comes from lots and lots and lots of training. But the cool part is you learn it so quickly, you can use it fast. And you go, son of a bitch, I can't believe I just said that and it worked. Like, they said, okay. So it's that training. or retraining your default system it's huge, because my previous default system, what I would default to, was not good.
So here's the thing I'm thinking of as we're talking about shitty first drafts and stuff. I'm thinking back to my academic days. And I don't think there was ever a time that I really studied for a test or did a paper other than the night before it was due. I always seemed to just pull it out of my ass and wing it. And then I carried that into other areas of my life, right? Because you brought up the preparation. It takes a lot of preparation to be good at something. And so what do you guys tell that contractor right now who's just content winging it in his sales process and might be looking at, yeah, it's a lot of work though, and I'm good enough and blah, blah, blah. Because I see that with a lot of guys. How many times we hear guys on the bridge and stuff say, oh, I don't have time to role play, and what they're really saying is, I'm going to continue to wing it. What would you tell me if that was me?
It's funny. You beat me to the punch, because I was about to ask you the same question. If you knew there was a method that you could learn, you're going to have to put some work in and you could learn, but it's going to make you a millionaire. Like, it will make you a millionaire. Why wouldn't you do it? And this is the question we've been asking ourselves for 6 years now, Tom.
Yeah.
Derek, what is the biggest obstacle? Why don't people want to join the CSA or join a group that will help them become a millionaire? Well, the answer is, first, you have to be coachable, which means you got to admit to yourself that you don't have the best answer. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're listening to us right now, are you truly happy as to where you are in business? And if the answer is yes, then you got a strange pastime listening to podcasts by guys like us.
Oh, shit.
But if the answer is no, I would like to do better and a lot better, then you have to get off your ass and do something. But you have to admit a few things. My game plan's not working, so let me try someone else's game plan out. And when I get there, I'm going to have to follow their schedule.
Yeah.
Which is going to make you feel uncomfortable. You're going to have to do a few things, like this whole role playing. I mean, ask yourself, how many role plays have you ever done in your life? And the answer for most people is probably a half of one, because they quit halfway through the first one because it was so goddamn uncomfortable. So, yeah. But this will, can I say guaranteed? I mean,
sure.
This will make you millions of dollars. If you run a decent business now, this will make you millions of dollars.
It's funny. You talked about people aren't coachable and this and that being one of the things that keeps them from doing something like this. I think when I'm looking at all the people that I know that are successful in anything, and it's in the group, outside of the group, not just business or whatever, one of the common traits that I see in every single one of them is they refuse to be satisfied with their current level of success. And I don't mean like they're ungrateful and they're not content, but they have this desire where they know that once you reach a level, you learn so much and you have another level to go to, and you have another level to go to. And so you're never really satisfied. You can be content in your life and be happy. And I think the three of us are. I think we're pretty content. We have good lives and this and that. But one of the things I appreciate about what we do and what we bring to the group is we're always looking to raise the bar in ourselves and in others, and do things to push ourselves out of our own comfort zone. It'd be really easy to just sit back, And so that's something that I see as a huge common denominator between successful people is their they want to win championships. They're not content winning conference every year. Like, let's win it all every year. And there's always another level. I don't know, Derek, what do you think? You're nodding.
Well, no, I was just having a conversation recently, and if you're listening to this podcast, there's something inside of you that you want to let out. There's another person that you have. What people are seeing is actually a facade of who you really want to be. And so if you're listening to this stuff and you're wanting to get better, it's because there's someone inside of you that really needs to get out. And who you look at in the mirror is not the real you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you want to be something different, but you're just interested sometimes and you're not committed, right? We've been using that a lot lately.
Yeah.
And then I think of a quote from Dr. Phil. I'd never forget just seeing one of his shows one time, and somebody was just going on and on about all this, all the blaming everything and all the problems. And he just went, well, how's it working for you? So like when shit's not working for you, but you think you got it figured out and everything's okay, but somehow you still have problems, you might want to do a little reality check and go, how is this really working for me? Is what I'm doing actually working, or do I think that it's working? Am I just scared? Because that is the thing. It's that fear of commitment. You're afraid to commit to something because you'll have to put in the work, and you might have to get uncomfortable, and you might actually become the person that you really want to be. And then you have to stay that person. So it's much easier just to lay back and not do anything. But all the people that put in the time, they put in the effort, what they find is it was so much easier and it's so much more fun, because now you're dealing with a group of other like-minded people of all different levels and all different, just have other superpowers and skill sets. So when you're doing these role plays, you're not only role playing a sales process and just getting those reps in to feel comfortable. All of a sudden you have a network of people that you can lean on. It's not just you on that island by yourself. You have a network of people where you could just go, hey man, what would you do in this situation? Now, obviously you got to be careful of the advice that you're receiving, but that level of comfort that you get from that, I didn't realize it coming in when I first started hanging out with you guys, just a listener, just a member. But then I went, man, I'm not alone anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, I'm doing this with people that are trying to go in the same direction. And this is so much easier than doing it by myself.
So, all right, let's talk about fear a minute. Do you think most are afraid of failure, or most are afraid of what they're going to have to do to succeed?
One thing for sure, if you never try, you'll never fail.
Mm-hmm.
And like Derek was just saying, this confidence that you will get, it starts with using the right words to win a customer over that you otherwise weren't going to. That leads into confidence in all parts of your life. And it's the craziest thing, and this is not answering your question, Tom, but it starts with one small win, learn how to win the sales, and it ends up learning how to win in life.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about me. I don't fear failure because I've failed so much. I'm like, whatever. It's like another day at the park, right? Like I do. Like when I find myself being afraid of something or dragging my feet, it's usually because I'm counting the cost of what it's going to take to succeed in that thing.
Yeah.
I mean, just think of fitness, right? Just think of fitness. Like you're going, okay, if I'm really going to commit to something, man, I'm committed. Eating a certain way, working out a number of times a week or a day, counting my calories, I mean, and so I think it's a good thing if somebody is really, if they're on the fence because they're counting the cost. I actually think that's a good thing, because you really understand the seriousness of it. And that's what I know we tell people that are like, hey, is the bridge for me? I'm like, well, you better count the cost, because if you want to be successful, if you just want to be average and be just like you are now, then you're going to join and then you're going to leave and not change anything, then don't bother, but if you're really all in here, and I think back to Steve, you brought up somebody being coachable and all that other stuff earlier. I think one of the first things that you got to get in touch with is you got to get super clear on where you're at right now and whether you're happy or not being right here. Because the habits you have right now and the habits you allow and the actions you allow right now, that's just a preview of your future. So you got to get to the point where what do we used to say in football? I hate to lose more than I like to win. Like seriously, the emotion of losing is more painful to me. And so I would encourage those guys listening right now, really take stock of where you're at. Get in touch with what the your life and business looks like right now. You know, is it, I mean, we're coming near the end of 2020 right now. It's end of October as we're recording this. Is this just one of those other years where you're like, oh yeah, I didn't make the money I thought I was going to make. And I went into more debt and I was stealing from my family again and all this other shit because I was always gone. Like, when are you going to stop the shit? I think you have to have a reality check of what you're really doing.
What if you actually didn't have to hit rock bottom before you needed a group like this?
Yeah.
Because that's the motivator, right? When you've hit the bottom and all you've got is at least you can turn over and look up, right? Like when you've hit rock bottom, because it's either coming and maybe it's already happened and that's why you're listening, but maybe you're just interested. What if you actually didn't go to rock bottom? What if you just went, you know what? I'm going to throw caution to the wind. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to hang out with these guys and I'm going to do what they tell me to do. So maybe I don't have to experience that, because isn't that the biggest motivator? Health conditions. Men in general typically don't go to the doctor until it hurts so bad we can't stand it. Hurts a little bit. Push it off. Then you eventually go, and then what do you say? Man, I wish I'd have did that a long time ago. So it's going to happen. If you're listening to this, it's going to happen one way or the other. Either you're going to keep going down, or you're going to be able to turn over and look up, and there'll be a rope there for you. And a lot of other people will help pull you up.
When I was in my 30s and making a ton of money, my partners and I would go to Atlantic City, but every year we go to Vegas, and we would gamble, and I could win $10,000 in a trip, you know, which was 30 years later. What is that? 30 grand. But I could also lose 5 grand. And I just remembered this because I quit gambling literally like 25 years ago, because the happiness I would get from winning 10 grand would be like a 5 out of 10. But the pissed offness I would get from losing 5 grand would be like a 15 out of 10. So Tom, as soon as you started saying that, I'm like, that's why I quit gambling, because I hated to lose way more than the victory felt good.
Right.
And
yeah. See, when I lose, I'm replaying the game tape. I'm going, I should have prepared better here. I could have done this better, right? It's a sales call and you don't get the job or whatever. You can always look back and debrief the loss. That's always much easier for me to do than to debrief the win. Okay. Because I lost. And so I might be a little competitive. I don't know, but yeah, I'd rather be punched in the first thing in the morning, 365 days a year than lose. So, although I guess you could say in a way that's losing. So
that's a interesting analogy.
You know, Marilyn Monroe put it a different way, and I got to get this right. She said, I'm pretty sure it was her. She said, there is no food on this planet that tastes as good as skinny feels.
Wow. Yeah, I never heard that one before.
It's pretty profound if you think about it.
Yeah.
The goal is she wants to be skinny so bad. She's not going to lose that game no matter what. No food can taste as good as skinny feels.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I like that one.
There's so many of our listeners right now Googling who the hell Marilyn Monroe is. They don't even know.
You don't know who Marilyn Monroe is?
I'm just glad.
Absolutely, I know.
I'm just glad Steve didn't use a Shirley Temple example.
The desire to make a really sweet drink is more powerful than
all right.
For Judy Garland.
But I did learn where the Guinness Book of World Records even came from. Do you know?
Nope. Bunch of drunk guys drinking Guinness.
Yeah, Guinness, the Guinness pubs.
Yeah.
Literally back in Ireland and England, the patrons would get in fights because they would argue about facts. And so just to save their pubs, the Guinness pub people published a book that had all the facts in it. So they wouldn't get in a fight and wreck the bar. And that started the Guinness Book of World Records. It's the same.
Look at that.
Amazing?
See, Stephen, that might be the golden nugget for anyone that was listening today.
Yeah. I listened to this podcast today, and you know what? Do you know where the Guinness Book of World Records came from?
Check this shit out.
We know somebody's going to use that. Somebody's going to be drinking with their buddies, and they're going to bring that shit up. So
It is good. That's a good one too.
So here's the trivia that ties into that. Do you know where the saying "mind your P's and Q's" came from?
Oh, I do.
no,
It's kind of relative to that. It's like when people were getting rowdy in the bars, it was like mind your pints and quarts. That was
Don't
the
drink
mind
too
your P's
much.
and Q's.
yeah, so
Yeah.
don't break it over somebody's head. Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. Well, I think we've added enough wisdom to people for today. So, all right, wrap this up. Bottom line, what's our point today for everybody?
Well, the
Doing the
point
bridge.
is, what Mike Tyson said, everybody's got to get it. Everybody has a game plan until they get punched in the face.
Yep.
And the point is, we train so hard that when we get punched in the face, we know we have a game plan. And because, as Derek loves to say, you train to your highest level, you perform to your highest level of training. Is that what it is, Derek?
Yeah. You rise to your highest level of training. Sure.
Point is, we're ready for anything. Any punch you throw at us, we can handle and turn that customer around and win the sale. But it only comes with hard work and practice.
Well, listen, before we get out of here today, I want to put it out to those of you that are listening. If you're sick of spending a bunch of time chasing cheap prospects who are never going to buy from you, if you're sick of all the windshield time, if you're sick of putting your future in the hands of prospects and homeowners that don't value your time or your talents, we have a really cool download, a guide for you guys that you can go grab right now for free. And it's really called the Contractor's Guide to Spotting a Cheap Prospect Before They Waste Your Time, and so that you'll never hear we need to think about it again. And so, guys, if you want to grab that, head to contractorsalesacademy.com/cheap, CHEAP, cheap, to help you spot those cheap prospects. You guys rock. Good hanging out again. And so guys, go to contractorsalesacademy.com/cheap. And if you would, give us a review on iTunes. We super appreciate it because that's how we get the word out. The more contractors that, I always butcher this quote, the rising ships in the tide thing. What's that one? Rising tide raises all boats, or whatever the fuck it is. Okay. The more contractors
Like that.
that take control, the more contractors that take back control of their sales process, the better it's going to be for everybody. Okay. And that's why we do what we do. That's why we put this out for free. So help us get the word out. Share this with another contractor. Give us a review. And we'll talk to you guys next time.